Welcome to this video on making graphs using Excel. So to begin with, I'm just going to give you a quick recap. So mean or average, as it's also known, is where most of our data lie. Now standard error and standard deviation, these are ways of looking at the spread of our data. So if this is our true population and we take a few samples of this population, our standard deviation is how tight our samples are to each other. So how similar are they? How close are they to our mean? Our standard error is then an estimate of how different our mean is to the true mean of the real population. The smaller the numbers, the tighter the data are. So standard error is actually standard deviation divided by the square root of number of samples, because the more samples you take, the closer the sample mean will become to the population mean. So the data that I'm going to show you, these are based on real life data. These were done with dogs who were positive or negative for a bacteria called Campylobacter, and lots of other information was recorded about them. But I'm just going to show you a small subset of those data. So to work out our average, we click here on this cell, and as you can see, I've labelled everything here so I know exactly what everything is. In Excel, if you press the equals button, this tells it that you want to perform some sort of calculation or formula. So now all you have to do is type what it is that you want to do. So in this case, I want to do an average. I start typing it and it will appear in the drop down. I double click it, it opens up a bracket, and now I just need to grab my data. So I just grab this column here, I press return, it will automatically close the brackets for me in this equation. If you do an equation and pressing return doesn't work, then just try putting in that closed bracket manually. The other great thing is that you can simply drag this over and it will work out the same calculation for this column. And you can double check that. If you click here, it should have column I, I2, I28. Here it has J, J2, J28. The standard deviation, press equals again, start to type STD. There are lots of different options here. The old school version was this one that I use quite often, to be honest. This isn't any different from this one. So standard dev S, so this is assuming that you've simply got a sample of the population, whereas standard dev P is assuming that you have got every single population sample. So it's unlikely that you would ever collect an entire population, but there may be some circumstances when you would. So unless you know that's the case, go here for the one that says .s. Again, it will open the bracket and you just have to grab. Be really careful not to grab the average. You don't want to include that. That will really skew your data and your standard deviation. That won't be right. So sometimes it can be useful to even put these in bold or underline them in some way so you know that they are themselves a calculation. So again, I press enter, and again, I can just drag that across, and you can see that this has got J, so I know this is the right calculation. So there are two ways that you could do the standard error. You can do it all in one equation, or you can do it separately. If you want to do it in one equation, press equals again, click the cell that has your standard deviation in, press this, I think it's a forward slash, which means divide in Excel, open up some brackets, go to square root, which is SQ, and then this should pop up, double click, it automatically opens up another bracket. So then you need to put in the number of samples that you have. So I can see here that this says 28, but I also know I have something written here, so they're shifted down one. So all I do is it will be 28 minus 1, which of course is 27. I will then close the brackets, close them again. Now that's my standard error. And once again, I can just drag this across. Double check, yes, J30, that's the correct one. Now that's fine when you have the same number of samples in both columns, but what if you don't have the same number of samples in both columns? So once again, let's do standard deviation using the S. And you can drag this as well. It doesn't matter, there's nothing here. It doesn't matter that the formula goes all the way down here because there's nothing entered. If there was something entered here and you didn't want it to be included, you would have to modify your formula so that it didn't go down to I28. So you would simply click on it and you would modify it that way. So it's quite easy to do. So for the standard error, what you can do is, if we tried to use the previous method, we wouldn't really be able to do it because we've got a different number of samples. So instead, what you could do is work it out separately. So you could do the square root of 27, because I've still got the same samples. That's the square root of 27. So I can also do here the square root. Now this is 19 because I have 20 here, but I know it's -1 because I have some text. Just close that off and enter. And then all you need to do is divide this cell by this cell. And once again, you can drag that across, double check, I, and yes, we're in column I. So it has divided that by that, which is exactly what we wanted. So if we go back here, and you can see our standard error has remained the same for this column, as it should. Now to make a graph, highlight your data. It depends on whether you need your average data for your graph or if you need the raw data. More often than not, you need some sort of average rather than raw data. So if we wanted to make a bar chart, we go here to the Insert tab, then we go here to Bar Chart, and it's done really easily. So if we want to add these standard errors, so just do a single click on the bar, so make sure that they're both highlighted, go to the plus here, go to error bars. Now, some have automatically appeared. So in theory, you can make these graphs with just the average and not calculating this. But I haven't yet found a way to find out what the actual values are when Excel automatically generates them. So you won't know what they are. I think it's much better practice to work it out the way that I've just shown you. And to make sure that you've definitely got the right error bars, you then go here on this little arrow, go to more options, scroll down here, and this panel appears. This panel is very useful for editing graphs. And you can see that it's got a sort of graph setting. This is actual data. And then this has got sort of how you can change colors and other effects here. So you might find that useful for editing graphs. So I'm now selected custom at the bottom, specify value. So the standard error will be the same either side of your mean. That's the way it's worked out. It's not like a 25 or 75% confidence interval. It is the same either side, and you can just grab both of them and they'll automatically put it in the same order. So this will go here and this will go on the second bar. So just repeat it for the lower value. Okay, and we can just shut that, and there you go. Now you've got your error bars on your graphs. To change the names of these, so it's sometimes easier if you literally were to write above your average, negative and positive, and you can actually grab them all at the same time and it will automatically label them. And I'm going to show you some examples of that shortly. But in the meantime, if you need to go back, right click on your graph, go to select data. This is a very useful panel. You can also switch your Y and your X axis if you want as well. It doesn't always work, but every now and then you might find that that's useful. If you then go to edit, another box appears. Again, I can highlight these two. They're in the same order. Negative on the left, positive on the right. I go OK. They've now appeared here. OK again. And there we go. They've now been labelled. The title here, you can just manually change. But this has to be a much, much more informative title. And I will show you examples of more thorough titles in a minute. To add an X or a Y axis, or if perhaps there wasn't a title for some reason you wanted to add one, make sure that you're at the top here, under Chart Tools in Design, go to Add Chart Element, Axis Title, Primary Vertical, and this has gone a bit funny because it's on its side, so it's a bit strange to get used to. So this would be age, and then in months. So always put the unit of measurement in brackets. So that has shown you very briefly how you can make a simple bar chart using Excel. So I'm now going to show you some other graphs that I've made previously. We'll just close that for the time being. So the key thing with Excel and making graphs is you've got to have your data organized in the right way. If your data are organized in the right way, you will find making graphs so much easier. For example, this is quite a complicated one. This is looking at dogs when they live with another dog or not. So dogs that live with another dog, yes, whether they were negative, positive. Lives with another dog, no. Kind of looks like more of them were negative when they didn't live with another dog. So to make this graph, what I did was I just grabbed everything here and I had it all set out nicely. I go to Insert and then here, and there you go. And then it's automatically labeled, some of these already. So all you have to do is change that title and that Y-axis. So you can see here. So that's really quite straightforward. To make pie charts, it's difficult to make this kind of graph with a pie chart. You end up having to do each one of these as a separate pie chart. In order to do that, I would do this. So I would make one for negative and one for positive. So again, I have highlighted the yes and the no. Go on to insert, go here to pie chart, simple pie. Here we go, and it's already pre-labeled it. Now, if for some reason that wasn't pre-labeled, again, you go to right click, you go to select data, you go to edit, and then you would simply drag the bit that you wanted, and that would label it correctly. So that's how you would do a pie chart. We've got some more examples here. So again, I've looked at the number of dogs that fell into different categories of size. So again, I can just highlight all of these, and this will then generate an appropriate graph. So another thing that you might find useful on occasion, if you are struggling to make your graph, one thing that might be worth a go is doing this. So let's say we've got a negative graph. Now I'm going to make a positive graph, insert that. So we've got these two. Now what I can do here is I can actually copy this, and then I can paste it. And now, as you can see, I think it's possibly swapped the colours around just to be really confusing. But if you look at the sizes of them, they are actually the same thing. So what this has done is by copying one graph onto another, it's actually merged the graphs together. So that's quite a handy trick that I have to admit I've used quite a few times myself in Excel. So histograms in Excel, it's not a natural for doing histograms. If you really want to make a histogram, then you have to have your totals of your data into whatever categories that you would like. In fact, then if I can grab labels, this will save me a job labeling slightly later on. So for this, I would do insert. I would go here to graph. You can explore the options. There may be a better histogram option, but what you can do is if you now right click this and go to format chart area, now this box appears again. So you would want to go to, let's first of all click here, click on the actual bars so they're all highlighted. Then you go to this bar symbol. And now here it says gap width. So all I do is take that right down. And there you go. There you've got your histogram. And as I said before, if you want to make something look nice, you can change the color here. So we could do a line, we could do a solid line. Here we go. So that's how I make my solid lines. So this is where you would do all the nice pretty editing of your colours. And again, I've got more graphs down here, and they were all done in a similar manner. And just remember, organising your data and having the right format is the key to making a good graph in Excel. And make sure that you're very detailed in both your title and your Y and your X axis. These are really easy marks when you're doing your assignments. So just make sure you get those right.